Do you feel like you're drifting in life, maybe asking yourself, what is my purpose? Maybe you put your dreams on the shelf, left dusty and forgotten. Today, we're shaking the dust off and talking about mission and how to find yours. Let's go. Welcome to the 1000 Podcast, a warrior's journey of faith, fighting, and lifelong learning. I'm your host, Blair Perrin, and today we are talking about mission and how to find yours. And so, as we talk about mission, I'm going to be reflecting a little bit on mine. That way, we can kind of see how we can do this. Also, this is an invitation for exploration. This means that this is going to take some time for you to reflect on yourself and your experience and kind of the direction that you're going to go. To make this, really quick, I want to be able to just show you that there's a guide available that you can figure out your reason for being. So the importance of having a mission. Let's see here. People without a mission drift through life, reacting instead of creating. We're meant to create, all of us. We are meant to use our minds to build things, whether it's Legos or architecture. Maybe it's being able to build businesses. Maybe you're an entrepreneur. Maybe you are a game developer. But we are built to create. Maybe you are an artist and you're starting from a blank canvas. Maybe you like woodwork or carpentry and you're building houses and homes for people. We are built to help serve people in different ways. And so how were you made to create? This subject is an invitation to explore and to reflect on the things that you've done so far and the things that you might be heading to next. So, a mission gives direction, energy, and meaning to everything you do. I think those are some key words. So, direction, energy, meaning. So, direction, let's go with that first. So, if we do not have a target, you're never going to hit it. You ever hear that saying? If you don't have a target, you're never going to hit it. That's not wrong, because sometimes when we do have a focus, you will find that maybe what you're doing right at that time does not actually align with your full purpose, but it does help you hone in on skill development for that purpose that you're going for. Let me give an example. So I am creating something right now, right? This podcast has 4 base points, really. So helping people level up and get unstuck in their mind, their strongholds, their limiting beliefs, their body breakthrough. Maybe it's physical plateaus or relieving pain, optimizing their health. 3, they're spiritual. And I believe something that we just don't talk about enough. And then 4, community or your tribe. And with those pillars in mind for this podcast, for the 1000 tribe, that is my purpose right now. And what does that entail? Helping people. My purpose is always to help people in some form of way. And I found out later in life that it would be mind, body, spirit. But I was a personal trainer for a while. And so as a personal trainer, even before I was a personal trainer, I wanted to be a psychologist. I just wanted to help people, give advice, but I needed the experience. And so what was being a personal trainer? Actually, I didn't know that it was going to be life coaching, but it totally ended up being like that. I would train their clients to help with their bodies, because that was a really important thing for, I believe, for most people to work on, to be able to elevate themselves in their life and in their workplace. If you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind. If your body is sick, your mind is blurry, right? If you're sick, you don't even want to go to work. So the two and two came hand in hand. And then later on, I became a pastor. And so I just I didn't know I was going to become a pastor. I never woke up one morning and I'm like, you know what I want to be? I want to be a pastor. No, that's definitely not how it happened. That was, a meaningful accident, I guess I would say. And so how did that all come together to help me build this mind, body, spirit, and community? Those are so important things to me that I want to help people with. And so, yeah, if you are part of this podcast, and if you are part of the 1000 tribe, which we are just beginning, and this is why I've been building it. And so let's go with energy. I work 40 hours as a security officer overnight, and I do it for a couple different reasons. One, I've always enjoyed doing things that felt like I just never thought I could do, and so I just didn't know what being a security officer entailed. You have this romanticized thought of what it looked like, like a security officer, and just all the gear, and you got your radio on you, and not the Paul Blart security officer, which, Paul Blart does a whole lot more than a lot of security officers I've ever seen. But I want to be able to help people in a different way, and protection is great. And being a martial artist, I thought, how amazing would it be to be able to help train security officers and police officers to be able to use a martial art that isn't so offensive. If you see police officer brutality all over the world, right? Well, if they knew a little bit of jiu-jitsu, they wouldn't have to take themselves to that next level. There's so many security officers that have zero martial arts experience, zero grappling or jiu-jitsu experience, and then you go from nothing to 100, meaning you go from knowing nothing and having just a chip on your shoulder because you have a badge to carrying a firearm. And I think that is not good, right? And so my hope was to be able to be in that space, to be able to help elevate my colleagues, and just help people. Sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you so much for checking out the 1000 podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to see more like this, please subscribe and comment below how this episode made you feel. But don't stop there. You're going to want to hit that notification button, because we're just getting started here. And in the next few months, I plan to drop a new episode every week until we hit 12 episodes. And that will be season 1, where we will take a week off to stop and evaluate all of the feedback for this new podcast, because your input matters. And just to show you my initial appreciation, I'm dropping freebie downloads that I've created to help you, my community, begin to find your purpose in this season. If you've been feeling stuck or just needed some encouragement or direction, Blair's Guide to Discover the Reason for Being, that's the title, and part 2 called Season for the Reason, both guides will be available today. Not only that, I have one more special gift, and it's a free guide to help us learn to protect our hearts, or to guard our hearts. This is something I wish someone would have told me as a young man, also great for a young lady, everybody really, but now I am giving this knowledge away to you simply because I believe you matter, and you should believe so too. Thank you. Let's get back to the episode. Right, so energy. If I didn't have this, if I didn't have this as like, this is what I'm trying to build, if it didn't give me energy back, then I wouldn't have the energy to put out, right? I wouldn't be able to work a 40-hour work week, overnights, graves, lacking sleep, and then on my days off, and in between grind, because you know what, this matters so much to me. Being able to help people get unstuck and level up in their life in so many different ways, that matters so much to me. I want to see people living a joyful life, but also just set free from being stuck in discouragement, despair, depression, or burnout. Like, that sucks. So let's elevate together, right? Meaning. And so this is something that, like, putting meaning to something can't so much just be taught. Like, you have to find it for yourself. And for a lot of us, there is, we grow up, at least I grew up being able to be like, man, there has to be more to life than this. And, I think for a lot of people it seems like there isn't. And I only say that because I've worked with so many people. I'm 36 years old, and I've been in so many different workplaces where you see you're working next to the guy that has been there all their life. They haven't done anything but that, and they say the phrase, like, you ask them, like, hey, how's it going, Frank? And they're like, oh, living in paradise, and or something like that. But it's not. It's the furthest thing from paradise. Unless paradise is being isolated on an island and you can't escape. There's just, you're not getting a Mai Tai or anything like that. And so that's unfortunate. And so I hate to see that. And I would hate to see that for even, a young person to even begin to think like, hey, I don't even know how to dream, man. I'm just trying to survive. And yeah, let's break that cycle. Let's begin to help other people. And so, yeah, being able to put meaning into what you're doing. Let's make another shift. Maybe you are in a dead end job right now. You know what? There is purpose in your dead end job, because if you don't find the end of yourself, you'll never find yourself. Does that make sense? If you don't get to the end of yourself, you won't find yourself. Meaning, sometimes if you don't get to the place where you're like, you know what, I hate this job, and there's got to be more out there. If you don't hate your job enough, you're not going to leave that job to go to another place. There's been times in my life where I'm like, man, I hate this job. One, this place is immoral, and they're scamming other people. It's like, that's not the type of person I am. It's like, I got to get out of here. And once I get out of here, like, I need to do something that is going to give me life. And like this past season, I've been in the same place, and thankfully I have my wife that's been so encouraging to me. But there was a space where I didn't have like a career job, and I was like, man, I can't just go work at Star Sandwiches, or like, I don't know if I could just be a cashier right now. And I was willing to do so if I needed to. But I was like, if I do any of those things, I know it's only going to be temporary, because it's going to suck my soul, And I needed to do something that would give me some purpose, give me some direction. And for me, I love training. And so finding out, I'm like, oh yeah, how about extending my martial arts training into security? And so that's kind of how I got into it. So if you have a dead end job, acquire the skills, everything that you can from it. You're already there. And so whatever those skill sets are, whatever that job position is, attain all of those skills. And it's okay to make some mistakes in that job. Who cares, right? You're about to move on anyways. So why not learn how to use your voice, be more authoritative, see if you can bump up in management, just to bump up in management. you know, level up your life while you can, and then move on, and, move on, right. Give them a 2 weeks, 2 month notice, even though you're like, man, I'm already done with this. Be a stand-up person and just me. I understand sometimes you just don't have that choice. You're just like, I gotta get out. But if you can, um, conjure up the energy to be like, all right, at least I left the right way, and now I can use them as, a good reference on my resume to move on to the next. Build your resume, acquire those skills. All right, let's talk about, it's not just about success, it's about significance and impact. So we are still talking about your mission. And so, what is your mission? Your mission is your passion, the things that you love, your purpose, and your way to make an impact. So your purpose is being able to, like, how can you serve the world? What does the world need right now, and what can you do to be able to help the world? And so putting your passion, your purpose, and impact equals your mission. And so it's not just about success, it's about significance and impact. What is that for you? For me, something I didn't realize right away, but I was just talking to one of my friends, Johnny. Shout out to you, brother. But we were talking about a phrase that has really stuck with me, but it was having a digital legacy. And we were talking about how he had photos and just memory stones that haven't been digitized yet. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking also about, like, my family and my grandparents, and even family that I don't know, that that I might never know, really, because there's only so much time in the day you can spend with them. There's only so many, pictures and videos that you can see that haven't been put online. But having a digital legacy like a podcast, I can't imagine how much information my son, daughter, or grandkids someday, right, is going to be able to reflect on who I was, what I cared about, what I was passionate about, what my mission was, what made me me. And like, that is significant to me, that leaving a legacy, or just leaving a story. Yeah, I think that is really important. And so you have to, once again, take time to reflect. What is that for you? So number 2, the difference between a job, career, calling, and mission. Let's go over this. So a job is something that you do for money. We already said sometimes we have some dead-end jobs, and sometimes you're there just for the money, but you can still make a little bit of an impact in people's lives there. Don't forget that. Like, you might be there for a purpose, and you might be acquiring skills yet that's going to help you with the next one, the career, a long-term profession. And so long-term, that is, some people are super long-term. I admire those that were like, you know what I want to be? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a surgeon. I want to be a judge. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a pilot. And it just seems like they woke up one day at a young age and they're just like, this is what I want to do. And they do it. And that they're that thing all their life. Like, that's amazing. That's awesome. I wish, I don't know if I wish, I was like that, but I'm not like that at all. I have been searching, prodding, and exploring all different aspects of the workplace. And one of the longest term professions that I've had was being in the health industry. And so being a personal trainer or group fitness instructor, it's all of the above, right? So you're a personal trainer, group fitness instructor, wellness director, massage therapist, all of those things, all had to do with helping elevate people in their mental and their physical health. That was important to me. And would I say that's long term? It's pretty long term, right? Um, and then, having been even outside of that, right? Being an athlete, but I've never lost my love for gym life or for physical health, learning and educating. I listen to podcasts about it all the time. I can't help it. It's a passion of mine, and being able to help other people. And right now I get to help my wife in the gym. That's that's awesome. And I love it. And I always, it makes me remember, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I fell in love with this, because how I was taught while I was in school was totally wrong. So let's go on. So I was a personal trainer, wellness professional for over a decade, and then I became a pastor. And so did I just become a pastor? No, I became a believer, and then I've served the church and helped out in a lot of different ways before I became a pastor. And then I became a pastor for 5 years. And for some, like you might consider that long term, but for me, I still consider that pretty short term, right? Your calling. Let's move on to the third one. Your calling, your God-given purpose that impacts the world. So that's it. So that's an interesting thing to talk about, right? In Hawaii, they have this. In Hawaiian, they have this word called kuleana, and basically it means your God-given purpose. And it's an interesting one to talk about, because, like I said, some people find or like just wake up and already know what their purpose is, what they need to do, what kind of profession that they're going to have to be in. But for a lot of us, that is not so precise, like we have to explore, mess things up a bit, and then figure that out in the long haul. But, over all the different areas that I've ever worked in, who I am as a person from childhood to high school, to college, military life, I've had this one common denominator in all of them, and it is to help people and give advice. I love climbing the mountain, no matter how difficult it is. And a lot of times I'm doing it, by myself or solo. And then I love being able to, in turn, take someone up that same trail. Even though, what's amazing about it is that I get to tell them, I'm like, hey, guess what? We're going to have this adventure. And it, like me being there is like showing and demonstrating that this is not impossible, that it can be done. I don't know why. I've always loved to be able to do those things. I started what was it? It was like a wedding, a bridal retreat type thing, where I took a bride and bridesmaids on this workout excursion. And then because I've already fell in love with trails and the outdoors, I took them on a difficult hike and back, one, to help them with camaraderie, and then two, to help them be team players on their wedding day, because like there are a lot of things that a bride has to go through from the morning to the evening. That's a long day. And so to help them work as a team, to help the bride, because the bride is, like you got to have a happy bride, right? On the day of the wedding. And so helping the bridesmaids change their perspective on just being there to being aware and helping the bride have a good day, whether it was helping her with just different things that were going on that needed to be addressed. Also, accounting of her energy and making sure that she's not stuck in conversations she doesn't want to be part of, and also make sure she has a drink every now and then, right? Like, those are important to me, and I'm sure it was important to the bride. Let's move on. So, helping people. That has always been my mission, and taking them from a place up the mountain, a place that I have already walked up through. I feel like that's like my purpose. That's what gives me life. All right. So I want you to ask yourself, are you living for a paycheck, or are you living for purpose? Are you living for a paycheck, or are you living for purpose? Or are you in the position right now where you are able to do both? But if you are living for a paycheck and a paycheck alone, what's next? Is there anything that you can do? Maybe it's time to journal, and maybe it's time to reflect on what dreams have you put on to the shelf? Because it is time. There's no better time than now to begin to shake things up. We already know that any job that we have, and all of our positions it's up in the air. At the end of the day, we need to learn how to adapt. We learned that from COVID, right? How many people lost their jobs and positions? That was a really tough time for a lot of people. But what was the good in that? It created new ways to do jobs. A lot of people are now working remote, the same job that they had, because like, why are we paying for an office space? And for others, they're like, you know what? You're right. I don't really need this job. Actually, I wanted to put more time and attention to family. How can I be able to turn my workplace in, put it into my life, integrate that into my life? Yeah. So, yeah, are you just living for a paycheck, or are you living for purpose? And so, living for purpose doesn't necessarily mean that you have the career or job that that is like the optimal job for you to live out your purpose right now. Maybe you're in that position. That's awesome. But if you're not in that position right now, are there things that you can do to help level up you, sharpen your skills to get ready for your purpose? Can you take classes? Are there other people that you're going to be able to maybe do a mastermind and do an idea breakdown, or encourage each other to be able to go after our dreams and careers? We need to be able to have others that we can lean on, and for them to lean on us too. So purpose, that's awesome. All right, where are we at? We're at 26 minutes. Thank you guys so much for just being here and giving me some of your time and attention. I hope this is valuable to you, and hopefully I'm doing this at an efficient pace, and that you're also getting to learn a little bit about me as well. I can't wait to learn about you. If you feel like you have a purpose, I want you to just comment below what you think that is right now. Comment below. What do you think your purpose is? How do you help and serve people? What are you like passionate about? What is your passion and your purpose, and how do you make an impact? That equals your mission, right? All right. So, how do you discover your mission? Here we go. How do you discover your mission? 4 key elements. First is your passion. What do you love? What excites you? What could you do for hours? I bet you can already name some of those things right now, right? What is that for me? I love martial arts. I love creating and building, and I love pioneering. All of those things that I already talked about. And I could do those for hours on end. I love creating. I love sitting here and reflecting, and I love to journal, and I love to help lift other people up. What is that for you? What can you do for hours on end? I know a couple of people that just enjoy reading, and that they can just, it's a superpower to them. They can just read like 900 pages in a week. I'm like, what the heck? They just enjoy reading. They love the news, or they love politics, a lot of different things that, what I'm happy for is that we have such a unique blend of people all over the world that have different ways to do things, that have different purposes. Like, who would want all of us to be the same? We'd be robots. No one wants that. Pain. Okay. Pain. This is an interesting thing to talk about. What have you overcome? Your mission is often tied to your greatest struggles. That's an interesting thing to think about. Your mission is often tied to your greatest struggles. Let's talk about that. For my struggles, I have struggled with, and this is like almost every encourager or motivator's struggle right here. This is, if you have a gift of encouragement, this is probably where your pain point is. This is probably the exact place where you struggle. But it's discouragement or depression or burnout. Like, I have been in those stuck places, and often you serve the people who you used to be. And so I was once stuck. I want to help people get unstuck. And I also, in most of my life, I don't know if, I feel like some people just don't take the time to think this. They're so on their grind. But for me, I was always wondering, where do I belong? And over the course of my life, I even, there have been times where I've been, in a crowd of people, be surrounded by friends and still have that same thought, like, oh, where do I belong? And that's a weird feeling. So what was the result of that? What is the outcome? Well, asking that question over and over has led me to this. I love bringing people together. I love having people know that they belong somewhere, because they should. And so that's what Tribe 1000 is all about. It's like, man, like, you know what? I don't have a crew, Blair. I don't have, friends that are, that are like-minded, like you and I. And so this is an invitation for everybody, for those that want to have a warrior mentality, meaning that they want to be on mission. They want to be on purpose. They want to, live life, have a career, and, be free from the system, And so your mission is tied to some of your greatest struggles. So that's going to take some time for reflection. Write that down. Write that down. Make a note of it. And be okay to be able to have to do some of that hard work, because to be able to find your purpose, that's, it's going to take some hard work. Strength. Oh, this is better. Let's talk about strength. Strength. What are you gifted in? What are you gifted in? I bet you can name, 3 to 5 things that you might be gifted in. But for some of us, sometimes that's harder. You maybe this is also an invitation to start asking around, asking some of the people closest to you that you can trust, and ask them, like, how do you see me? What do you feel like I'm gifted in? And let's talk about those strengths. What are you naturally good at, and what do people seek you out for? When I think about what am I naturally good at, One is I feel like I'm pretty good at learning new things. And I only say that to say I have had so many different jobs over my lifetime, my short lifetime, right? 36 years old. And I've done those jobs mostly because I was very curious, right? And if you ever heard the saying, how about you take a walk in my shoes? You know what? I've stepped into a lot of shoes. And I won't name them all. I already said, personal trainer, massage therapist, I'm security officer, right? I've said those things, pastor, wedding DJ, wedding photographer. Man, I have worked in warehouses, drive forklifts. I've been in call centers, worked at an ice cream store, right? I have done a lot of different things, and I think it's fun. Being a bartender, it was fun. It was scary. It's scary to do all those things, especially for someone that just like wants to be. I want to be good at it right away, right? But that's just not how it is. So you gotta be humble every time you step into a place. And but every time I do step into a place and I take some time to better myself in those areas, what happened? I became better at one-on-one talking as a personal trainer. I began better at using my authority and directing traffic as a wedding photographer, directing people, right? Groups of people that are having fun and they're moving every which way. Being able to know and feel how to move people on a dance floor using the microphone and also by song choice, right? There's a lot of different things that you can pick up and learn that you would never know unless you stepped into those shoes. So, yeah. Yeah, what do people seek you out for? Yeah, you should ask. You should just ask people. I know there's people in your life right now, and you're like, hey, what do you think I'm good at? It's like, how do you see me? How do people see me? Impact. Let's talk about impact. How can you serve others? A mission is just about you. What? Oh yeah, a mission isn't just about you, but who you're called to help. Who are you called to help? Where will you make an impact? Maybe you even have like a demographic in mind, a type of people. Maybe you're like, like some teachers, they're just like, I'm called to kids. I'm called to kids. I'm called to youth. Like, man, I applaud teachers and teachers just in general nowadays. Being a teacher would be extremely difficult, just where the world is right now. But for someone to invest in your life 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, multiple lives, right? Classrooms of lives, multiple classrooms of students, getting to know each of their names, their quirks, their strengths, their weaknesses, the things that they're going through, because of their, life or situation, their family. Yeah, there's a lot to take in there. So, yeah, if you know a teacher, pat them on the back and say, good job. It ain't easy. I can't imagine. You need a raise. And so who are you called to help? Who's your demographic? Maybe it's a different country. Maybe you don't even know what that demographic is. Maybe you need to travel some more. And maybe you need to get into new groups of people. Like maybe you're like, I serve people at the bar. That's my demographic. This town, this location, this community is my demographic. This is my people. Where will you make an impact? For the 1,000 tribe, I hope to have 1,000 meaningful relationships, meaning in some way, shape, or form, being able to lift up those people. Maybe it's being able to equip 100 people to lift up the others, right? Maybe this first 10, this first 50 that come onto the 1,000 tribe, maybe their legacy. And it's about building them up to be able to make a bigger impact in all of the rest. But I feel like the goal of 1,000 isn't too much. We have so many YouTube channels that have millions of subscribers, but how many are you actually making an impact in? I don't know, but I want 1,000. 1,000 meaningful relationships. If you want to be part of this tribe, just ask, and we're creating something. We're about to launch a Discord here soon too, and so yeah, we're building from the ground up. You need to ask yourself, where do these 4 elements overlap? And that's where your mission is found, through this. And that's why it's going to take some time to reflect. If you haven't already, just make sure you pick up that guide. It's free for you right now. Find your reason, discover your reason for being. It's free for you. This is just one aspect of the whole of that guide, right? It's going to take some, it's going to take some work. All right. So once again, passion, purpose, impact equals your mission. We're going to start to wrap things up. I just want to thank you guys once again for just taking the time to spend with me. So number 1, in how to find your mission, the importance of having a mission. People without a mission drift through life, reacting instead of creating. You are called to create. A mission gives direction, energy, meaning in everything you do. Find that direction. Find what's giving you energy. If it's not giving you energy, let it go and figure it out. The time is now. So your success is just not about success. It's about significance and impact. Where and what's your demographic? Who do you want to make an impact in? Is it your family? Is it your community? Is it friends? Are you still trying to figure that out? Let's go. Let's go. Number 2. So the difference between a job, career, calling, and mission. We talked about those things. Just know, wherever you are right now, acquire the skills that you're going to need for your purpose. I think that's the biggest takeaway here. To be able to find your mission and to be able to do your mission successfully, and you're going to want to acquire all the skills. And so acquiring skills might be over time. You might have 1 to 2, 3 different jobs before you're like, oh, all right, I finally found it, Blair. But what's awesome about that is you can still find purpose in wherever you are right now. Find your purpose in the now. 3, how to discover your mission. The core key elements, once again, your passion. What do you love? What do you love? Think about it. Write it down. What do you love? Pain. What have you overcome? Because oftentimes what you overcome is tied to your greatest struggle. All right, let's go to strength. Strength, what are you gifted in? What are you naturally gifted in? And what do people seek you out for? All right, and impact, last. How can you serve others? How can you serve others right now? Even if you're in that job and workplace and you're just like, you know what? This isn't it, Blair. I've been working at Wally World, a long time, but I know I'm created for more. Do that side hustle thing, man. Do that side hustle. I'm working as a security officer, and I'm working on building this up, the 1000 podcast. All right. And I wouldn't be able to do that if it didn't give me energy too. But because I find purpose in it, I find meaning in it, that is important to me. It gives me energy to be able to do this. Awesome. So thank you guys so much for staying in and sticking with me over this 43 minutes of time. But I hope this is the beginning of you to find your purpose and find meaning in what you're doing right now. All right, so we're going to call that. So thank you so much once again for joining me. I'm your host, Blair Perrin. This is the 1000 podcast. Wait till the next one. We're going to continue to add to these things. Get your guide, the reason for being, and you'll kind of get a gist of where we're going right now. We're talking about those things. So, well, stay tuned. I'll talk to you next time. Peace out.